Hey everyone, I thought I'd do a video I got inspiration watching a video on Leonardo da Vinci and what made him a genius. And it interestingly mentioned that the key to his genius was he admitted when he was wrong. So I'm going to entitle this video "The Key to Genius and Salvation is Admitting You Are Wrong," and I'm going to use an illustration from John chapter 8. And we'll play a video on Leonardo da Vinci in a minute. But the sub points I want to make is be prepared to change your worldview. I want to explain that from 1974 to 2005, I believed in faith alone for salvation. I believed God's law given Moses was dead and gone. And from 1960 to 2014, I believed in the Trinity, meaning I started as an infant as a Catholic, and the Catholics believed in that. And you go all the way to 2014. That's when I started studying in depth the Reformation, the trial of Servetus, and I concluded, even though I still resisted agreeing the Trinity was false, I definitely was looking at what corruptions had been made in the Bible that were made by the Trinitarians, and that kind of lodged me from my firm conviction in the Trinity. Why would they have to do that if it were a true thing? That's kind of what crossed my mind. Anyway, I want to play for you a clip. It's very short on Leonardo da Vinci and his genius from a gentleman, and I think you'll enjoy this short clip.
Lesson number 3. Know when you are wrong. Leonardo thought deeply and critically about almost everything, which means that he was bound to be wrong at one point or another. Now, in some circles, the practice of sticking to your guns is seen as a good thing, and people who change their mind from one position to another are often labeled flip-floppers. But this kind of a mindset can really keep you from growing and reaching your highest potential. An important part of what made Leonardo who he was his willingness to adjust his beliefs to fit new information, not the other way around. And he did this even with beliefs and theories that he held dear. For instance, he really liked finding comparisons between the human body and the Earth, and one theory that he held for a while was that the Earth's waters might circulate similarly to that of the human body's blood vessels. But as meaningful as this analogy was to him, as beautiful as it seemed, once he realized that it did not fit the facts, he dropped it and went looking for a new theory that did. So follow in Leonardo's footsteps in this area. Don't hold yourself to your past beliefs if they do not fit the facts. Use the facts to find a more accurate theory to live by.
All right, now I'm going to use a episode with Jesus and these Jews in John 8:31-37 specifically. And then we're going to do this by starting with these verses in 28 to 30. So we set up what's happening in 31 to 37. And this is going to illustrate what happened with these gentlemen is they got new information from Jesus, but they weren't willing to change their mind. They believed in Jesus, but they refused to do something that he asked them to do. And they wouldn't reconsider what he was saying. And they actually got belligerent. And you'll see what Jesus says is their fate. So this is the proof that just having faith alone is something you have to always reconsider in light of John 8, verses 31 to 37, because these men had faith in Jesus. In fact, they definitely did. And yet they didn't do what he wanted them to do. He asked them to do something and they refused and they got angry. So hold on and listen and see if this won't help turn your mind around from where you are. If you're like me, faith alone, that's how I was. And that's that's at the core of this passage. So Jesus said, "When you have lifted up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am He, and that I do nothing on my own, but speak just what the Father has taught me. The one who sent me is with me. He has not left me alone, for I always do what pleases him." Even as he spoke, many believed in him. Pisto eis Jesus. Now, it really means obeyed unto him, turned in obedience to follow him, but that's another question. But for purposes of you who are in the faith alone and you believe John is saying believed in, so let's just go with what you understand, and we'll deal with those issues of translation later. So they believe there's many who believed in him. Now we're going to find out a couple of them who did that, and they went and refused to do what Jesus told them to do. Now, I title this, and I'm saying it as bluntly as I can. Jesus rejects faith alone saves you in John 8:30-36. The lost Jews failed to do Abraham's works in John 8:39. So you've just got to stick with Jesus, right? Are you trusting Jesus? Is he going to guide you in any wrong way? No. It's not Doug telling you. This is Jesus telling you. So listen to what he says. This is the Authorized King James Version. As he spake these words, many believed on him. Then said Jesus to those Jews which believed on him, if you continue in my word, so that he's applauding them, you've begun to follow me. If you continue in my word, then are you my disciples. So that's what he wants. He wants them to become disciples. Indeed. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Now, what is Jesus implying? You don't know all the truth yet. You believe in me, but you don't know all the truth you need to know. Isn't that right? So faith alone doesn't save them, doesn't give them everything they need. They need more, Jesus is saying, right? Let's keep track. So this is where they answer. And this is where they made the mistake. Rather than changing their minds about that they knew everything, they just needed to believe in Jesus. They did not need to know anything he was going to teach them beyond what they believed, that he was the Christ, he was the Messiah, and so on. They answered him, verse 33, we be Abraham's seed and were never in bondage to any man. How sayest you, you shall be made free? Okay, now they're the seed of Abraham and they're claiming they themselves have never been in bondage. Now, if they're talking about the Jewish race, that's not true because they were all in Egypt and they were all in bondage. But I think they're actually literally saying we personally are not in bondage. We are not in bondage, and so you're implying that we're not free. So the word truth shall make you free is what you're responding to. We're free already. We don't need you to give us freedom. Okay, they are free already. Verse 34, Jesus answered them, verily, verily, I say unto you, whosoever commits sin is the servant of sin, or the slave of sin. Sometimes it's translated slave, and that would be a better appropriate here, because Jesus is saying that their sin makes them a slave. If they get the truth, they'll be free. So slavery and freedom is really what he's talking about. So it should be slave of sin, and that's how other translations do it. But regardless, the point is, he is saying whoever commits sin is the slave or servant of sin. But if you had followed me, I was going to give you truth. Now that you've said you're not even, you are free already. You don't need me, is what they're saying. We just have your faith in you, and we don't need you to teach us to do anything and how to live or become your disciple. Then Jesus goes on in verse 35, excuse me. And the servant abides not in the house forever, but the son abides ever. So in other words, he says, if you're a slave or servant in a person's house, you're not guaranteed that once, the family grows up that you're going to be in that house forever. But if you became a son, a part of the family, you would be in that house forever, more often than not, right? Some families will kick you out. Verse 36, if the Son therefore shall make you free, you shall be free indeed. Verse 37, I know that you are Abraham's seed, but you seek to kill me. Now Jesus is telling them, I know something about you. And he's going to tell them, I know something that's going on in your hearts right now. So he's reading them, whether spiritually, supernaturally, or just by looking at their faces as he's speaking. I speak that which I know that you are Abraham's seed, but you seek to kill me because my word has no place in you. So he doesn't mean that they didn't hear what he said earlier. They believed in him. He's saying, I've offered you truth that will set you free, and there is no room for that for them. They have no room for his word, that they need to become disciples. They just want to be faith alone advocates. That's all they are. They believe in him, but they don't want to follow him. They don't want to become disciples. They don't want to listen to his commands. They don't want to actually take it seriously, or they're going to dismiss it to a different dispensation, or for some reason they don't have to listen to him. They already know all they need to know about how to be saved just by faith alone. Verse 38, I speak that which I have seen with my Father. So Jesus is saying, when I'm talking to you, I'm telling you what the Father said. You would think that would excite these people, right? Like, I'm listening to a man who's the Father is dwelling in and is speaking through, so I could learn truth that I don't know, right? But do you read Jesus with this intent, whoever I'm referring to here, that you've just believed in faith alone? Do you listen to him that you actually have to do what he says? It's not optional. If he says you have to give charity to take care of the food, clothing, and water for the brethren, and if you do that, you'll go to heaven. But if you refuse to do that, you're going to be sent to the same place that the devil and the angels go. And he's talking to people who call him Lord, Lord in each instance, the sheep and the goats. So you can call him Lord, Lord all day long. But if you don't do this truth, this fact, this commandment, Jesus says you're going to go to the same place that the devil and his angels go. But you don't accept that. That doesn't fit your paradigm that some other false teacher has interloped and contradicted Jesus and giving you a false, contrary message to this doctrine here, where Jesus is teaching you faith alone does not save. Will you follow Jesus, or will you follow the false teacher you've been listening to for decades? But I digress. We'll keep going. They answered. So these are the people who have faith alone, don't want to trust him, don't want to follow him, don't want to listen to his new truth that's going to free them because they're already free. They answered and said unto him, Abraham is our father. Jesus said unto them, if you were Abraham's children, you would do the works. Why is he mentioning works? Oh my gosh, this sounds so anti-Pauline, because it is anti-Pauline. So I go, it's the same word, erga, that you will find in Ephesians 2:8-9. You're saved by faith, not works, lest any man should boast. So there's your answer, what Jesus is talking about. He's contradicting Paul, so you would wake up. He contradicts Romans 4:3-4, which is also a misstatement of what Genesis 15:6 actually says, even in the King James. If you go read it, Abraham believed God and counted it to God as a righteous thing. What was that? The prior verse, Genesis 15:5 said God made a promise to give a child in old age to Abraham. And then Abraham responds, Abraham believed God and counted it to him for righteous. It was a righteous deed of God to him, nothing else. Read it in the King James. Now, they put a small he, which, by the way, tells you they know the subject of that word counted is Abraham. That's why it's a small he. When if they think it's God, they'll tell you and capitalize it. But there actually is no article he there at all. So it's Abraham believed God and counted him for righteousness. And Hebrew, Professor Hamilton explains in his book on Hebrew in the New Testament, he says, hey, it's the same as in English. If there's no subject change, it's the same person who believed is the same person who's counted. And he specifically says that is true for Genesis 15:6, unless we let Paul correct the Bible. Are we allowed to do that? No, the Bible is what corrects and tests Paul. You must test him against what the Bible truly says, not what he says the Bible is. That's not how you test someone. Oh, I can redefine the Bible. I'm going to reinterpret it, and you have to follow my directions. And even though I'm totally contradicting the original meaning of the passage, no, that's not how it works, everybody. God says you cannot add or subtract from a verse. And that's what they do. That's what Paul did, change the meaning of the verse completely. But I digress. So if you were Abraham's children, you would do the works of Abraham. So what's lacking for them? They have faith, but what are they lacking? What are they violating? What are they in need of fixing? They have to have the works of Abraham, his righteous deeds, not some faith alone. In fact, that's the whole point of the way Paul was reading Genesis 15:6. No, Jesus is pointing not at faith, but at works. Verse 40, but now you seek to kill me, a man that has told you the truth. By the way, Jesus is calling himself what? God? He just said, I'm a man. Oh, he doesn't know his own head. Okay, all right. That's what you get response. You have been trained as a seal who's, going to give you 3 fish and you jump out of the water and you come up on stage and we give you the fish and then you can jump back in the water. That's literally what's gone on. A brainwashing that is so thorough. The Trinity in particular is the most thorough of brainwashing there is. And I got to tell you, that was the hardest doctrine for me to give up. Please read John 17:1-3. When I read it, I finally gave it up. Jesus says, there's the Father, he prays a prayer and he says, Father, you're the only true God. That's what you need. You need the clarity of that verse to hammer it home, that you need to follow what Jesus said. The Father is the only true God. Those are his words, even with all the Trinitarian corruptions that have been added to the New Testament. And there are many. We document them at this channel. This one they would not touch. God did protect and preserve his word against all the frauds, but he also made it you can find all the frauds, which we document in very clearly and obvious. Let's continue. But now you seek to kill me, a man that has told you the truth, which I have heard of God or from God. This did not Abraham do. So these people, these faith alone advocates who don't believe they're in slavery to anything, and Jesus says you're a slave of sin as long as you sin, they are not doing the works of Abraham. They're standing on their faith alone, thinking this is going to make them right with God, and they don't need anything to do with Jesus. They don't need to become a disciple. It's just simply we've accepted the Messiah. We've accepted him as the Son of God, as we showed you in the setup verses. That's what they were all believing. Now the test is: are you going to stop there? And Jesus is confronting them. This is the lesson of all times. This is the greatest part of John you never read, and no one ever explains to you. Let's keep going. Whose works do they do? You, verse 41, you do the deeds, the works of your Father. And it gets worse if I kept reading. Now, I'm sure some of you are going, well, how can I escape these conclusions? So I always try to show you the other side, or what the issues are that you might be concerned about. So let's look at what Jesus was talking about, believe. What verb did he use? Well, the verb he used was pisto, the same one you read in John 3:16. It's the same verb, whatever that means, it's happening here. And he uses it in what's called the perfect active participle and with the dative auto. And this is in Robert's word pictures. And you can see here, this is Bible Hub's reading of it. So it reads pepistu, pepistu, pepist ukatas. Okay. So having believed. So there were some who were having believed. And these are the men who Jesus is going to be talking to. So going back here to verse 31, then Jesus said to those Jews which believed on him, it's the same verb as bestow, if you continue my word, then you're my disciples in fact. And they have already begun in a meaningful way. Very important if you notice, if you continue in my word, then you are my disciples indeed. So he's admitting, Jesus is admitting, they've already begun in his word. They're listening and following for a moment up to this time. Now he's asking them to become disciples. So where does their disobedience begin? Not before. Jesus is not saying they've done anything wrong yet. They're on the right road. But if you continue my word, then you will be my disciples. They have to go to another level. So wherever they are is not what will set them free. They believe faith alone is going to set them free, but it's only putting them on the right path, but did not mean that they have to continue in Jesus's word. They have to keep listening and following what he teaches. This is where the problem is. And so when you look at the verb, the perfect active participle, this is up to the point where they have done right. And now Jesus is confronting them with a request. They must do something else. And they don't want to do it. They don't think they have to do it. They think they have the truth without his help. Is basically what it is. And they don't have to follow him. He's optional for them. So I want to share with you Brian Stoffergen's analysis of this verb. And it's obvious what it means, but I want him to explain it to you. They are described, these Jews are described in verse 31 as tous pepistukotas, the ones having believed a perfect participle, which usually denotes a past action that has continued effect in the present. Such a verb can be translated with the perfect he has believed, or with the present she believes. But when it says active, it's present. It's articular perfect active. It means it's in the present. So we would generally assume that these are Jews who have believed in the past and are presently believing in Jesus. Okay, so don't say I don't have to make a decision here because these people believe for a time, and when Jesus is talking to them, they've stopped believing. No, they're still believing and continue to believe and follow his word. But now he's giving them an instruction that they must actually become his disciples, actually study what he teaches and follow it, obviously. So this is something they think they don't have to do. They just have to have faith and belief alone. And if you study Pharisee doctrine, this is very similar. They in fact, the Pharisees taught you were elected as a Jew and you don't even have to do anything. You just simply are a Jew. And it was election for all of them. All Jews go to heaven no matter how bad they are or whatever, unless they become an apostate. That's the only exception. I want you to see a parallel to this same context that is Jesus warns about in Luke 19, verses 11 to 27. So these are servants who are citizens of the kingdom of God on earth, but they will not do what they're told. And they do not want Jesus to actually reign over them. They have no authority to tell you what to do. That's what you think is going on. So when you say Jesus tells us the law will continue for all generations and until heaven and earth pass away, it will still be here. I mean, you should listen to that. He's your master. And so you need to take and find out what laws apply to Gentiles. Oh, it's the 10 Commandments. There's a few more in the Levitical code on sexual morality. Okay, I can live with all that. It's 30, 40, 30 commands. I've estimated it. But you've been made to think it's 613 commands. No, it isn't. Not for you Gentiles. So let's listen to what Jesus says in 19:11-27. See if you can't see the same message. And he called his 10 servants and delivered them 10 pounds and said unto them, occupy till I came. But his citizens hated him and sent a message after him saying, we will not have the man to reign over us. I'm going to just stop right there. These are servants. Jesus, the king, trusts them, gives them treasures initially, and they don't want to have anything to do with it because they have to now do what he said: occupy, keep busy, do works. No, we don't want to do that. We want to sit around and just be your citizens and have the life of luxury while you're gone in heaven, and we're just going to have a good time here. That's all it's about. It's all about us getting everything, and no service for you. Sorry, poor Jesus, we don't have to listen to you, Mr. Breaker. He tells us we don't have. You are a dispensation that won't be here until after I die. So I'm not going to pay one iota of time more on you. I'm going to spend it all on Paul. He's our only apostle. I mean, this is Mr. Breaker's. I'm not misrepresenting his statements. This is how you are to live today in this world, not worrying about Jesus. And he's point blank. He's blunt. But what is he doing? He's never admitted that he could be wrong. He's never even thought outside the box. Maybe I'm in this trap of Paul. Maybe I need to test Paul. Yes. Listen to this parable right here, the parable of the 10 minas. Jesus is ridiculing people who are his citizens, who have pledged themselves to him. But when he asks them to go do something, work, occupy yourself till I come, do what I've told you to do, and they don't want to do it. And they send back a little message of hate. We will not this man to rule over us. We don't want Jesus to rule over us. Like Mr. Breaker tells his people, he's not the one we get our marching orders from. And another guy says the same thing. We don't get our daily prayer orders from Jesus. We get them from Paul. That's the one we're to follow, and that's the one we're to perpetuate. But look at what's going on here. Citizens of Jesus' kingdom, citizens who he delivered treasures to, don't want him to be reigning over them. And how is Jesus going to handle it? You can just bet your bottom of dollars. If I keep going, you won't like the outcome. So I'm just going to say, go read it. Luke 19, verses 11 to 27. See what Jesus is thinking of you when you have the same attitude where I'm a citizen of the kingdom of God already. I don't need to worry about what Jesus said, occupy till I come. I'm not going to do what he said. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to spread a gospel of this false gospel I've been misled to believe in. Oops, no, I believe it's true. The reason I hate Jesus' teachings has nothing to do with Jesus. Yeah, he believed in the law. He was delusional. Jesus didn't know what he was talking about. That's what Luther taught, by the way. Luther taught everybody. He said Jesus was behind Paul. He knew less about God's kingdom and words than Paul. Paul came with the truth, and was after Jesus died and resurrected. That's when God finally revealed to somebody, thank goodness, Paul, who learned the truth that God's law is dead and gone for both Jew and Gentile incidentally. Anyway, I'm going to just leave it there. So what is this key to genius? What is the key to eternal life? The same thing. You have to admit you're wrong sometimes and actually reanalyze and make sure all the facts you believe in line up with what you believe in. And just this passage alone, John 8, and also if you look at Luke 19, it's the same paradigm. People who believe and follow Jesus even are given treasures and call on him as Lord and truly believe. But when they have to become a disciple, when they have to occupy till I come, doing what he tells you to do, you don't want to do it, and you don't want him to reign over you. And that's not the way you're going to go to heaven. And that's not thinking outside the box. That's not being the genius that God gave each one of us in us to be geniuses, meaning bright, sunshiny people who know truth when they see it and will adjust their life to follow truth, not a lie. All right. God bless everybody. Ciao. Bye.